The sound of the slap cracked through the courtroom like a gunshot, freezing every breath in the room. In that single impulsive moment, the empire that Sergeant Bradley Cole had spent 15 years building began to fall apart. A slap, one swift, brutal motion, delivered to a well-dressed black woman he didn't know was the new federal judge. It was all caught on camera, and before the day would end, his career, his reputation, and his life would enter a free fall. But what came next wouldn't just dismantle his world. It would shake an entire system, one that had protected men like him for far too long. Bradley Cole wasn't just a cop, he was a symbol. At 42 years old, tall and imposing, with ice-blue eyes and a perfect record of discipline, he walked the halls of Brooklyn County like he owned them. His uniform, pristine. His medals, polished. His methods, known, but ignored. To his superiors, he was a top performer, boasting the highest number of arrests in the department. But to the Black and Latino communities, he was something else entirely. A walking nightmare in uniform. Rumor had it that his last medal, awarded for exceptional bravery during a raid in Brownsville, was earned by planting evidence on a young black man who was still serving time. Cole wore that honor like a trophy. That Thursday morning, he strutted into the federal courthouse as if it belonged to him. Guards stood straighter. Defendants lowered their gaze. His expensive cologne reached the room before he did. He was there to testify in a drug case. But then, he saw her, a black woman, elegant, composed, speaking to an attorney near the judge's bench. Something in him snapped. In his mind, she didn't belong there. She was in a space he thought wasn't hers to claim. Years of unchecked arrogance tightened like a knot in his throat. She stood tall. Natural hair, dark skin, a posture that said, "I know who I am." And worst of all, she didn't even flinch at his presence. She didn't see him. "Hey! You can't stand there!" he growled, storming over with heavy steps. The courtroom noise quieted. She turned toward him. Calm expression. No rush to respond. And then, he snapped. His hand cut the air. The slap hit hard enough to knock her glasses off. Silence. Like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Papers fell. A pen hit the marble floor and rolled, its soft metallic clink ringing like a scream. A law clerk's hands froze over the keyboard. A young paralegal's eyes widened in horror. And yet, the woman didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. She calmly bent, picked up her glasses and looked him directly in the eye. There was power in her stillness. The red mark blooming on her cheek carried not just her story, but the weight of generations who had stood tall in front of men like him. "I'm Judge Naomi Ellison," she said, her voice steady, yet sharp enough to make Cole swallow hard. "I'm the federal judge assigned to this courtroom today." It landed like a hammer, shattering something fundamental in Bradley Cole's world. His blood ran cold. The reality of what he had just done hit him like a gut punch. His lips parted, but no sound came out. "I thought she was," he finally muttered, words tripping over each other in growing panic. It was already too late. Judge Naomi Ellison stood tall, her dignity intact, even as the red imprint of his slap became more vivid against her dark skin. "This court is in recess for 15 minutes, she announced, turning without another word. She didn't look back. Every step was measured, controlled, not hurried, not weak. She simply closed the door behind her with a soft click that echoed like distant thunder. In the crowd, a young assistant district attorney, Isabella Reyes, stood frozen, her phone still in her trembling hand. She had recorded everything. Her eyes, now glossy with tears, locked with a local journalist seated nearby. The video was already uploading, first to colleagues, then to media outlets. In just minutes, it would be breaking news. "You just assaulted a federal judge," the lead prosecutor whispered into Cole's ear. He didn't respond, his face pale against the deep navy of his uniform. A single drop of sweat rolled down his temple, a slow, silent countdown to his downfall. In the tension-filled courtroom, only the distant hum of phones vibrating could be heard as notifications started flooding in. The video was out, and Cole's fall had only just begun. What happens next? How do you escape something filmed from 5 different angles? What will go viral in hours had already begun to shake the foundation of the very system that protected him. But what most people didn't know was that Judge Ellison had made a choice. She could have ordered his arrest right there. She had the power. But instead, she chose dignity. She chose silence. Not out of weakness, but out of control. And as that choice rippled across the country, it began uncovering something far deeper. Because behind Sergeant Cole's impulsive slap was a history, a dark one, years of abuse, systematically buried, and now they were about to resurface. At the back of the courtroom, a young rookie officer named Sophia Chen stood stiff, subconsciously rubbing the faded scar on her wrist, a memory of her own encounter with Cole's brand of justice. As Cole stood frozen at the center of the courtroom, Judge Naomi Ellison was already setting in motion a storm that would reveal far more than a single act of violence. Behind her closed office door, the video of the slap was gaining speed online. Unstoppable. 3 hours later, it had crossed 500,000 views. The headline was everywhere. White cop assaults black federal judge in open courtroom. The comments were explosive. This happens every day. The only difference? This time it's on video. They finally got one. Caught red-handed. Meanwhile, over at the Vestridge Police Department, Chief Gordon Parker paced his office, nervous, frustrated. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, politicians, civil rights groups, everyone wanted answers. "We need to contain this. Immediately," he snapped to his assistant. "Tell them Sergeant Cole has been placed on temporary leave pending an internal review. Use the words, isolated incident, and exemplary record." Across the room, a muted TV played the breaking story on loop. A news anchor's voice narrated what the cameras had already made undeniable. In the heart of Riverside, a predominantly black neighborhood where Cole had patrolled for years, residents didn't call him by his badge number. They had a name for him, the White Ghost. Not because he showed up rarely, but because whenever he did, he left terror behind. "He broke my son's arm for sitting on our front steps," a mother told a reporter, eyes filled with tears. "He said he looked suspicious. We tried to file a complaint. No one listened." In the break room of the precinct, Officer Sophia Chen watched the news coverage in silence. Her wrist throbbed as if the scar on it remembered everything. 8 months earlier, she had confronted Cole about a falsified arrest report. He'd cornered her in the women's locker room. "Want to file charges?" he hissed. "Go ahead. See who they believe, the decorated hero or the Chinese rookie." Then he twisted her arm so hard she thought it would snap. He didn't leave just a mark on her skin. He left it on her soul. Now, suspended and spiraling, Sergeant Cole sat alone in his home's trophy room, watching his life fall apart, broadcasted on every screen. 3 empty whiskey bottles sat on the table. His phone buzzed. A message from Chief Gordon Parker. "Damage control. Say it was a misunderstanding. We're trying to contain this." But across the city, Judge Naomi Ellison hadn't made a single public statement. With a visible bruise across her cheek, she returned to court that afternoon and conducted proceedings as if nothing had happened. That silence shook reporters more than any fiery press conference ever could. Later that evening, in the private parking lot behind the courthouse, a voice called out softly, "Dr. Ellison?" It was Isabella Reyes, the young ADA. "I'm the one who recorded the video," she said, her voice trembling. "But that's not all. I've been reporting Cole's abuse for 3 years. No one listened." Judge Ellison looked at her, long and hard, then said, "My office. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Bring everything you have." At 6:58 a.m., Isabella arrived. On her tablet, a digital folder containing 47 individual complaints against Cole. Everyone from black or Latino victims. Everyone ignored. "How did you collect all this?" Ellison asked, stunned. "It started when he beat my cousin during a traffic stop," Isabella said. "No one filed charges, so I built a system to track every complaint." She pointed to the screen. Same neighborhoods, same victims, same silence from the department. Ellison nodded slowly. "And why come to me now?" "Because I saw it in your eyes after the slap. You didn't just feel your pain, you felt ours." Meanwhile, reporter Amara Johnson, from the Best Daily, dug deeper. Survivors of Cole's past misconduct began calling in, ready to share their stories. Her editor, once hesitant, now saw an opportunity to do more than just expose one man. "Run it," he said. "Make it a series. Blue Shield, who are they really protecting?" Back at the precinct, rookie officer Ryan Lewis sat beside Cole's empty locker. He listened as older officers brushed it all off. It was a misunderstanding. She didn't look like a judge. She should have identified herself. Ryan, fresh out of the academy, still believed in what the badge stood for. But that belief was cracking. "What if it had been your mother?" he asked softly. "Or your sister?" The room went cold. By the end of the second day, the slap video had crossed 5 million views. Mayor Samuel Warren stepped in. The city announced an independent investigation. And still, Judge Ellison stayed silent. But it was a silence that roared louder than any defense Cole could offer. Outside City Hall, protesters had started to gather. Signs were raised. Chants echoed down the streets. The world was watching. Inside his home, Sergeant Bradley Cole stayed hidden, hunkered down, blinds closed, as text messages from fellow officers flooded his phone. "Hang in there, brother. This'll blow over. We've got your back." But that night, he got a knock on the door he didn't expect. Chief Gordon Parker stood on his porch, looking over his shoulder like he'd snuck out of a crime scene. "They're everywhere," Parker whispered. "Media, protesters, lawyers." He stepped inside. "Bradley, we need a plan. Judge Ellison hasn't said anything publicly. That's not like her." He lowered his voice. "I heard. She's known for being methodical. She doesn't react. She calculates." Cole's face lost color. "What does that mean?" he asked, almost pleading. "I don't know," Parker said. "But I don't think she's planning just a suspension." He hesitated, then asked, "Is there anything I don't know? Something she could find? Something that could take us both down?" Cole's mind flashed to his personal laptop, the falsified reports, the planted evidence, the deleted body cam footage. He said nothing. Meanwhile, across the city, Judge Naomi Ellison sat in her office, lit only by the blue glow of her screen. The faces of Cole's victims formed a chilling digital mosaic in front of her. Beside her, Isabella Reyes and Sophia Chen worked quietly. Their silence wasn't hesitation. It was focus. In the corner, Amara Johnson scribbled in her notebook, documenting every step. "It's not just about the slap," Ellison finally said, gently touching the bruise on her cheek. "It's about a system built to protect men like Cole and silence women like us." She closed her laptop with a soft click, then looked at all three women in the room. "What we do next will change everything. Are you ready?" They nodded, each one fueled by something different, but bound by the same purpose. A storm was coming, and Cole had no idea he wasn't facing just a judge. He was facing a coalition of women ready to expose everything. The morning of the 5th day, Brooklyn woke to a headline that shook the city. Blue Shield, 15 years of police abuse, documented. Across the cover, Sergeant Bradley Cole's face alongside 47 victims. Amara Johnson's report detailed it all. Patterns of racial profiling, falsified evidence, cover-ups from within the department. Cole nearly choked on his coffee as his phone exploded with notifications. His first instinct? Call Parker. No answer. With shaking hands, he scrolled through the report. Names, dates, locations, testimonies, all backed by internal files. "How did they get this?" he whispered. This wasn't a leak. It was an operation. At the federal prosecutor's office, Judge Ellison led an emergency briefing. Beside her, Isabella Reyes opened her tablet. "This is the shadow file I've been building for the last 3 years. Every incident, every ignored complaint, every witness ready to speak." Sophia Chen lifted her sleeve. A faint scar marked her wrist. "I'm ready to testify. He attacked me when I questioned him, and I'm not the only officer who's ready to break the silence." Federal prosecutor Marcus Mason, once doubtful, now flipped through the files in disbelief. "This is massive," he murmured. "If this holds up, we're talking decades in prison." Ellison nodded. "This was never just about Cole. This isn't just about one man," Judge Naomi Ellison had said. "It's about the system that protected him." And within hours, federal agents stormed both the Vestridge Police Department and the private home of Sergeant Bradley Cole. Search warrants in hand. No more hiding. At the department, they seized computers, including one from Chief Parker's office. At Cole's home, they found a hidden safe filled with damning trophies, watches, wallets, even IDs of past victims. Then came the shout over the radio. "He's trying to flee. Back entrance." Cole, spotting black SUVs down the block, bolted for the rear door, only to find himself completely surrounded. By 2 p.m., a special federal court hearing was called. The entire city showed up. Ordinary citizens, police officers, victims, all crammed into the courtroom. And there, in the center, Cole stood in handcuffs. No badge, no uniform. Just panic on his face. Behind him, Chief Parker sat drenched in sweat. His silence was louder than any defense. When Judge Ellison entered, the room didn't need to be told to rise. They stood, not out of routine, but in respect. The fading bruise on her cheek was all the reminder they needed of how this all began. She didn't waste time. "This is not a standard hearing," Ellison began, her voice sharp and unwavering. "This is not just about an officer who struck a judge. It's about a system that failed those it swore to protect." Cole couldn't look up. He stared at the table, jaw tight. "Sergeant Bradley Cole," she continued, "you are formally charged with 47 counts: abuse of power, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and assault." At that moment, the courtroom doors creaked open. A hush fell as a man entered slowly, a middle-aged black man leaning on a cane. A collective murmur rose. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "we'd like to introduce a surprise witness, Dr. Marcus Wilson, former department physician, dismissed 8 years ago after attempting to report Cole's conduct." Cole's head snapped up. His face went ghost white. Wilson had been the only internal voice to speak out against him, and had mysteriously vanished after a so-called accident. Now, limping toward the stand, Wilson spoke with a voice that shook, but did not break. "I have here the falsified medical records requested by Chief Parker to cover up the injuries inflicted by Sergeant Cole." He raised a small device. "And this, the recording of the threat I received when I tried to report it." Across the room, Parker jumped to his feet. "I need to leave," but 2 federal agents blocked his exit. He wasn't going anywhere. The courtroom turned toward Cole. His kingdom wasn't crumbling. It was being burned to the ground. How had it all collapsed in just 5 days? How had the judge he'd dismissed orchestrated such a precise takedown? The answer came in Ellison's final blow. "Over the last 5 days, I've received 143 victim statements. 12 officers have agreed to testify against the department's protection scheme." She paused. "And most critically, we've gained access to a hidden department server, one that stored lost body cam footage for over a decade." The color drained from Cole's face. That server was supposed to be impenetrable. It was protected by years of silence, of secrets, of shame. Now, it was unlocked, and every buried truth was about to come screaming into daylight. Judge Naomi Ellison leaned forward. "What we discovered," she said, "was that every time an incriminating body cam video went missing, it was secretly backed up, not to protect victims, but as leverage. And Sergeant Cole, you appear in 28 of them." The courtroom fell silent again. For the first time, Cole looked her in the eye. All the arrogance was gone. Only realization remained. How did you get access to that?" he whispered, broken. Ellison allowed herself a calm, subtle smile. "Let's just say, your slap woke up people who had been silent for too long, even in your own department." That afternoon, Bradley Cole and Gordon Parker were taken into federal custody. The moment was captured from every angle. 2 of the most powerful men in the city, led away not by force, but by truth. But what no one anticipated was that this case, this fall, was only the beginning. 6 months later, Vestridge wasn't the same city. Where once fear had ruled, now there was something else growing: hope. The case, known nationwide as United States versus Cole, became a turning point. Not just for the city, but for police reform across the country. In a federal courthouse, Judge Naomi Ellison received the National Award for Judicial Integrity, not for being a victim, but for her calculated and courageous response. "I could have had him arrested that very day," she said, "but that would have been justice for one. What we needed was justice for all." The corridors that once echoed with Cole's footsteps now carried the stride of a different kind of leadership. The Vestridge Police Department was under new command. Captain Sophia Chen, the youngest and first Asian American woman in that role, took her oath with a steady voice and a powerful statement. "The scar remains," she said, glancing at her wrist, "but now it reminds me not of pain, but of the courage it took to face down abuse." In a medium-security prison, Bradley Cole watched the news on a small communal TV. His once proud face was lined with defeat. His sentence, 25 years, no parole before 15. Each day was a mirror of what he'd once done to others, those without power, without a voice. Gordon Parker, having cooperated with authorities, served a lighter sentence, but was transferred for his safety after exposing others. His confession, now known as the Parker List, led to the review of over 200 cases, 37 wrongful convictions overturned, most of them based on falsified evidence planted by Cole. Isabella Reyes, now promoted to senior district attorney, personally supervised every reopened case. "The system was built to protect people like Cole," she said during a law school lecture. "Our job now is to rebuild it, so it protects the people it was meant to. In Riverside, the neighborhood that suffered the most, a new community police station was opened. Inside the lobby, a quiet plaque was mounted. The slap that changed Vestridge. Not as a celebration of violence, but a reminder of what dignity can spark. One afternoon, Dr. Marcus Wilson, now Director of Ethics Training for Public Officials, sat beside Judge Ellison on a park bench. Children of every color ran by, laughing freely. "I never thought I'd live to see this," he said, eyes misting. Ellison smiled. The bruise was long gone, but the memory remained. "You know what people always ask me?" she said. "Why I didn't react that day. Why I didn't have him arrested immediately." "And what do you tell them?" Marcus asked. "That when you face someone who only understands brute force, your greatest weapon is dignity." He expected rage, expected a fight. My silence confused him more than anything else ever could. In the newsroom of the Vestridge Daily, Amara Johnson accepted her Pulitzer Prize. Her investigation, Blue Shield, had spread to 5 states, uncovering similar abuses of power. "We're not just telling stories," she said. "We're rewriting systems, one truth at a time." For Cole, alone in his prison cell, the hardest truth wasn't the bars. It was knowing. His downfall didn't start with that one slap. It started with years of arrogance, fueled by a system that never held him accountable. And when he finally faced someone who couldn't be intimidated, someone whose power came from integrity, his empire of fear collapsed like a house of cards. On her 1-year anniversary as captain, Sophia Chen launched a groundbreaking initiative: body cam footage, automatically uploaded to a civilian-supervised server. No more missing recordings. No more silence. "Justice isn't revenge," she told the new cadets. "It's responsibility. It's looking every citizen in the eye and seeing their humanity, no matter the color of their skin or the neighborhood they come from." Vestridge had learned its lesson, and now, so had the country. "True transformation," Ellison had once said, "doesn't come from one dramatic act. It comes from the quiet courage of many, and the wisdom to know that real strength isn't about control, it's about dignity." Even a single moment of dignity, in the face of raw abuse, can spark a fire no violence could ever extinguish.